Okay, so I'm going to look at this PowerPoint here. It's also in the Blackboard, and I want to just cover the for loop, or the for next loop. Okay, and so for next, the syntax is a little bit hard to see here because it says for and then a variable name. We call this the counter variable name, like I. I is a very common type of counter, because basically you're just counting something from a number to a certain number, or a number down to a certain number. Okay, you can go either direction, up or down. Okay, and then the word as data type here, as you can see, it has a bracket around it. It just means that it's optional. Okay, but I think depending on the setting of your Visual Studio, if you set it so that it's in strict mode, then you have to specify the data type. Otherwise, the system will know, and it will infer using the inference method, so that it will actually know what type of data it is. But usually, it should only be number values, numeric data, such as integer or decimal numbers. I don't think it will work for if you go like A through Z or something like that. It has to be integer, a numeric data type. And then you will have a start value. You are counting from what position, what number, to what number. So the end value and start value. And then this part here is called the step value. This is also optional. This tells you that how many steps should you jump through the loop. Okay, if you don't specify that number, then it will increment by a whole number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or by 1 plus 1 each loop. Okay, you can force that to jump. Maybe every loop you will skip a number, or you can skip 3 numbers. So you can jump 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever, right? So you can jump 1, 5, 10, and you would specify that over here under the step value. And then you would run into the body of the loop, and then at the end of that, then just say next. Here it has the counter variable name. This is the same variable name as this one here. You don't have to specify. It's not really required. As you can see here, it has this for price as integer, starting from 10 to 13. We're just going to count from 10 to 13, starting with 10. These are inclusive, okay? And then you would do that 10, 11, 12, 13. So it basically is 4 times. And then once you reach 13, after that it's going to be 14. So 14 is no longer within the range, so therefore it exits out of the loop. Okay, so the word price here is a variable name, and then it says down here at the end of the loop, it says next price. This is again as optional. You don't have to specify there. It will know which part to go. The reason I put it here is that it will know where to jump, because sometimes you might have a nested loop, right? So if you have that, then if you don't properly close your loop, it might jump out of order and go to a different location. But typically you don't have to put that there. So here is this is an example of right here, the step values. You can go in the positive direction or the negative direction. You can count up or count down, and then and this is just kind of the explaining what those are. So if you go in the positive direction, there's always going to be step. If you don't see it here, it will be step and then just plus 1, or just step 1. That means you're counting 1 value each time through the loop. So here is a positive count. We're counting from 10 to 13. So in the positive direction, you cannot put 5, 2, 1, and then you put step in the positive direction. You cannot go against each other. Okay, so if it's positive, then the start number must be less than or equal to the end number. Okay, you cannot go from 10 to 0 and then step in the positive direction. Okay, that will already exit out because it's already larger than 0. So you have a conflict there. And by the same token, you cannot do here either. If you're going from the negative 5 to 1, then it should be a negative direction. So you can't put like positive number over here. In here again, you can't put negative here because you're going from small to large. So just make sure you go in the right direction when you use the step. So again, typically you would use a whole number, so usually it's integer as your counter type. It's kind of rare to use double, as you can see at the bottom here, so 0.05 to 0.1, and you step by 0.01, which is doable, which is fine, but this is kind of rare. Okay, so you probably won't do that. It's always done in using whole numbers this way. Okay, and it always just numbers. So this is a diagram that you probably haven't seen before. This is part of the flow chart that would use for a for loop. Okay, again, you don't need to know what this means, but just to show you that a for loop will look something like this. Okay, so for 1, and then less than or equal to 5, then you loop through the repeating, or the step will be just 1. So you loop it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 each time. Okay, so and then you would loop through 1 while the integer counter is 1. You process the data, and then now you increment that to 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and then once you reach 6, it's exit out of the loop. So notice the sign here is less than or equal to, so that's why it's inclusive. The end number is inclusive, including the first number. Is another example to show a loop. So for year, right, as integer. So because year hasn't been declared yet up here anywhere, so usually you would declare the variable right here in the for statement, the variable name, and declare that as a data type of integer or decimal. Then equals to the initial number to the end number when you terminate this loop. So this is the terminating value 5. Once you reach 5, then that is the last loop, and then the next will be 6. Okay, where you are incrementing the value year by 1. In this case, it's not shown here, so the default value is 1. Step is 1. And once that step is out of the range out of 5, then it will cause this loop to stop. So in this case, it will loop through here 6 times, right? 5 times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 times. Okay. Because we're doing from 1. If we're from 0, then it will be 6 times. Okay. So here is a comparison between the two. We did the do loop last time, and then compare that to the for loop. As you can see, the code is much shorter. Okay, you cut the code by about 2 lines. Okay, and because in the do loop, notice that we have to create or declare this counter as num, right, in a separate statement. You cannot combine it together like you can do here the for loop. The for, you can declare the variable right here and the for the heading of the for statement, and then you can set the data type and initialize it and then set it right there. So one step. On the do loop, you have to declare the variable first, assign its value, the same line like this, and then you can use it in the heading of these do loop. So you already consume one additional line here. And then inside the body of the loop, you just add the sum, and then you have to also update the num, the counter, right? So here again, you add another extra line of code here. Whereas over here, the increment occurs in the step, which again, this example doesn't show, but the step would be just 1, which is the same as saying num is equal to num plus 1. Okay, and then once you do that, then you end the loop and you go back and you do it again. And this example, the step is 1 because we incremented by 1. If you increment this num equal to plus equal 2, then you are actually jumping 2 at a time. And then if you do that, you can also do over here. So you would say step and then just put plus 2. Okay, and the same line here. So it's much shorter to loop. Now so I guess the reason why you would choose between a for loop and a do loop is mainly for a for loop, you will have already know the limit, the range of the numbers or of the data you want to loop through. Okay, if you don't know how many there are, then usually that's the while loop or the do while loop. Okay, if I know that I have a list of 10 items or a list of 1,000 items, then I know that is already a fixed number. Then I can easily use the for loop to loop through all of them from 1 to 1,000, from 1 to a max. Okay, if you don't know, if you're not sure what that is, then usually you'll do the while loop, because you always want to test, make sure that value is it's true first, right? You validate the condition. If it's not true, then you will exit out. So if you don't know what that number is, then you always want to do the while loop. But of course, you can also use this too. Even if you don't know what this max value is, you can still say for 1 to this. If you don't know if it's 3, you can also put a condition in here to test the number 3, right? You get the, let's just say, data dot length. It will tell you what that length is. If it's 3, if it's a 10, or if it's 1,000, you can do that as well. But usually, if you know the limit already, then you will use the for loop. It's just easier that way. Okay, but you can use either loop to accomplish the same result. And of course, the advantage is code is much shorter, cleaner, and this is always something that programmers always look forward to. The less code they have to write, the better. It doesn't mean that it's always the faster. It's just that means that it's just much less to type. Okay, and sometimes it may not be the best option either. But as you will know, as you go into more into programming, you'll see that you will find that you always want to shorten your code as short as possible, and that also makes your code look shorter, less. Again, doesn't mean it's much faster. Sometimes it's not as efficient. Okay, so you can also have a nested loop. So here you have an example of a for loop. Here you have another for loop inside, just like we did before last time with the while loop and do while loop. Okay, you can also mix and match with a for loop, and the inside you have a do while loop, or a do until loop inside as well. It doesn't really matter, as long as they are nested completely inside of each other, then it's fine. You cannot have like a loop here and then it ends here, but this loop here have end outside of it. So you cannot have something like that. It will break the code. As long as it's completely contained within the loop, then that's fine. Okay. So this example shows we have a do while loop, right? It ends down here, and then inside that do while loop we have a for loop. It's nested inside the do while loop. Okay, so you can have a combination of both of those, or any of them. It doesn't really matter which one you use. And as you get better at this, you will probably make better decisions as to which loop to use. Okay, and this is really useful, especially later on when we deal with arrays. Next chapter and the chapter after that is if you want to print out a table of data, then you will have to use a nested loop. Okay, we'll learn that next time. And without the nested loop, it's almost really difficult, almost impossible to print out everything in the data, the table, well, without using a different loop. So, so if you look at this one here, let's see. Oh, this is a text change. Okay, so as you can see, that's pretty much it about the for loop. And then I want to also look at this other slide over here, something about, I can find it. Okay, just going to look really quick at this one here. This will be similar to the exercise or the assignment on the fish ID, where I asked you to, showed you that I mentioned about you can actually highlight a particular row in the list box. Okay, so we know we can access the list box by its index value, the index position, right? So if you have a list of items, let's just say like this, right? So you have the list here, you have cat, dog, and horse. So the index for cat will be 0, dog will be 1, horse will be 2, and so on. The same thing over here, the codes will be 0, and so on. So if you want to select the cat from the animals list, it will be the index of 0, right? Or you can select the item by the selected item by using the dot text. Then you get that selected item. And if you want to highlight, let's just say, 1 or 3 using the code, because if you click on it, it will select that for you. If you don't click on it, you can use the code to actually highlight a selection here by using its index number or the selected item. Okay, and that is by changing your code to something like this. So if I say the animal list box dot selected index is equal to 0, that means that it's going to highlight that first item in the list box. If you put equals to 3, then whatever that index of 3 is, that's the 4th item of the list will be highlighted, will be selected. Okay, using the index. If you're using the selected item instead, then you have to specify the actual value in that list box to be selected. So instead of the index, you would just say cat, and they will select the cat item if it's in the list. You have to match exactly. Okay, so you have 2 options to do that. So when you search for the ID in the fish ID program, you can say, so you user input the ID of ABC123. You check that with the list box. You go down the list one by one, and if it matches, then you would say, ID dot selected item equals whatever it is, or selected index equal to whatever that position is, the N or the I position, and it will select that for you. If it is not, then nothing is selected, right? Okay. Okay, so let's just. Are there any questions on the for loop? Okay, so let's just do some example with the for loop, and then we can do some other examples from the book as well. And we'll do together, and so I just want to make sure you have enough practice with these loops here, because these are a really important part of any program you'll be learning besides Visual Basic. So let's go ahead and let me close this, and then and the Visual Studio. If you haven't started your Visual Studio yet, you can fire it up right now. And we'll create a new project. What should we call it? I guess we'll just call it the maybe just call it for loops. Okay, this is chapter 6. So chapter 6, I put for loops, or for loop, maybe singular. Okay, Visual Basic Forms application. Make sure that's selected. So back to our visual usual design, and then let's just let's build this form here. We'll add a list box, and then we'll populate some data to a list box using the for loop. So get my toolbox out, and the common tools, put a list box here. Okay, and I usually would do my kind of big so we can see. So this would be just LST, we'll just call it data for now, just any data. I'll change the font to 20 as usual. Yeah, there should be no data there. We're going to add it add data to the list box using the for loop. And let's just add a button here to initialize this list box. This is the button. I'll just say, again, size would be like 20. The name would be just btn. What do we do here? Let's just call loop like last time we did. So btn loop, and the text will just say, well, you can call whatever you want. That's completely fine. I'll put for loop, so we know that's for loop. I'll change the name to btn for loop, so it's consistent. Okay. So the for loop button will retrieve the event when we double click this. We'll click this button, so double click on it, and then now we can start coding. Okay. Remember last time that you can actually initialize your data, right, using the load method. So form.load, and you can do that by going here and click a form load. But we're not gonna do that right now. But you could do that, right? So before you run, you click anything here, your form is loaded, and then you can initialize your form. And that only happens one time. It does not go back and recall that form again. It does only one time, and then it doesn't do anymore. Okay, it's just one. That's the pretty much the life cycle of a form. And then so this button, we're going to populate this list box called data with some numbers. Just to make it simple. So we'll do a loop. Again, the syntax will be just for. Okay. As you can see, there's each here. We'll deal with this one next time. This is for arrays. But for now, we just put the for loop, followed by a variable name. And the most common one you see is that anytime you do a loop is usually I. Okay, I, because it's just a counter. So I and J and K and so on. Because it's not really that important. Unless it's something really important, then you can use it a very specific data. Like maybe for a year, for example. If year is from 2010 to 2020, then you can call that as well as a year. But for now, it's just a counter, some type of data. So we just call it I, it's fine. And again, usually you put as data type here, and then it will be integer. Okay, and we're starting from, let's just say instead of 0, we start from 100 to maybe just 500. Okay. So if you hit enter, it should add that next for you. Again, you don't have to put I here. It's optional. So you don't have to do that. And this also adds integer. As you can see, if you, for example, if you dim, K as integer, right? If you do that, okay? And your version of Visual Studio may or may not allow you to do it, but if you don't supply the data type, it should still work depending on the settings. Okay, because if you do this, then again the value will tell you, or Visual Studio will look at the value here, and it knows that this is a decimal, an integer number. So when you mouse over your K, it will tell you this is a local variable K as integer type, right? Okay, same thing here. For I is the integer type because we explicitly force it to be integer, so it will be integer. But if I put here, I say D, force it to be a D. The D means a decimal, so it forces 10 to be a decimal instead of an integer. And then now, if I put my mouse over the K, it will tell you that now it's a decimal. Okay? So the system can determine that for you. If you don't specify, it will be that like that. Now, if you encounter a something like this, so up here, if I, for example, if I turn the option of the infer type to be off, okay. Let's see. Option strict to be on. Okay, you can see that now k is not valid, right? It thinks it's an object. So when you have this off here, it does not use the inference. So if I turn it back on, it knows that, okay, this is 10, therefore it should be integer. Okay, if I put like apple, then this should be now is a string. So it's smart enough to do that for you, because the inference is turned on. If I turn that off, then now you have to explicitly say this has to be what type it is to match the data type. Okay. So when you program, usually you would turn this off so that all your data would match up. So if I turn it on, this is almost kind of like the loosely typed language, right? We didn't specify the data type. We talked about that on day one. So Visual Basic is a strongly typed language. That means you have to specify the data type. So in this way, even though you don't specify, it is still a data type of strictly typed. In other words, if it's k as an apple, then I cannot now use k as 1. Okay, it's a violation, right? Whereas if you use it in JavaScript or PHP, then k, if it's apple, after that I can change k to a number, I can change k to a different object, it'll still be fine. Okay, so let me turn this back off again. So just so you know that if you see in the book example or somewhere else and they don't specify the data type here, then because the inference is being turned on. So I can do that. I can just say k is 100 to 500, it should still be fine. And if I put the I put mouse over the I, it will tell you that's integer, right? Okay, but it's always safe to put the data type because you know exactly what type it is going to be there. But if you do it this way, it just makes your code a little bit much shorter. Okay, so so from 100 to 500, this is going to be big. Okay, so maybe not 500. I think let me just put like a 110. Okay, I think 500 is a little bit big. The reason why is because the default step is 1. So we do 100, 101, 102, all the way to 500. That's pretty big, right? So just do 10 of them. If you don't specify here, again, the default is step 1. Okay, this is the same thing. I'm moving one step at a time. So I'm counting 1 and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? And if you want to skip a number, then you put 2 here. If you put 2, then it will go 100, and then 102, 104, and then so on. Okay? So the default is 1. You can explicitly say that here, or usually you don't have to specify. It knows that is the default number. So we'll start with 100. We're going up. Okay, so going from 100 to 110, that's going in the positive direction. So I can't put like step and then -1 here. Okay, it will contradict. Even though you don't give it error, but it will not. It will pose some problems. So you should not put that there. Okay, so how do we add this to the list box? How do we add I, right? We want to add I to the list box. So, what do we call it? LST data. Okay, so we're going to say LST data dot items, right? Add, we'll just basically add I to it. Integer, so there's no decimal values. You can force it to be has decimal values, but you don't have to in this case. And that's what we do, right? We'll loop through I, starting with 100. 100 to 110 is 100, the current value of I is 100, is it less than or equal to 10? That's what it means, right? This one means I is less than or equal to 110. Okay, and the current starting value is 100. Okay, so yes, it is true to add I to it. Then next we'll call the step here, which is plus 1, and then now I is now 101. So 101 is true, so we add that there all the way to 110, and then finally we add 111. Then it's no longer true and it exits out. Okay, and then we're done. So a very simple loop, just to add those numbers to the list box. And so if you save and run, I should have centered this, but I'll fix it in a minute. So here's our application. If I click on loop, so it adds from 100 to 110, just as expected. Again, use the for loop because you know your boundaries. Okay. And if you do it again, keep adding that to the bottom of the list, right? Keeps appending that because we did not clear the list. And again, the list is not going to delete the data unless we clear it. Okay, so let's just say now if you want to step by 2, so now we have about half of the numbers will be added there. In this case, it'll be just all the positive and even numbers. And then if you run this again, you see that we don't add 100, 102, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay, if you do it at 3, then you'll get 100, including 100. Okay, inclusive the first one, and then we'll go to 103 and 106 and then 109, and then that's it, right? You always start with the first the first number. It doesn't mean that you're gonna add. If you do this, you're gonna only go by or non-even or odd numbers or even numbers. That's something else you have to solve, right? If you want to print only the odd numbers, then you will have to loop through every one of those through step 1, and then you will validate whether it's divisible by 2 or not, right? To get the even number or odd numbers. So if you put, like, just say if you do by 7, it will still include the first number always, and then we'll add 7, and then after that it's done, because there's only really 2 numbers to add to include, because after that you plus 7 is 14, out of range already, so we exit out. Okay. So the step here is used for that purpose. Okay, and if you want to go down, then let's just say we want to go from 100 to 90. So now we're moving the opposite direction, the negative direction. So it can tell by the ending value and the first value. Okay, so as you can see, it doesn't say down to 90 or something. It doesn't have that keyword. Okay. So again, if you start, and now it's going, where is it down to? Oh, you have to use the the step here. Yeah, that's one thing I think you have to explicitly specify the, because if I don't do it, the default is this, right? So it keeps going up and down, and it will never get to the list. You check at 100, and now it says it's 100 less than 90. No, it's not true, so it will never go into the loop. Okay, so if you go in the opposite direction, you have to explicitly specify the negative direction of step -1 to force this loop to go in the negative direction. In the positive, you don't have to. So I think that's was the problem why it didn't work. So now we're going down from 100 to 90, including 90. And then if you step by -2 or -4, -3, same thing. You just go in the opposite direction. So it will jump based on that many steps. Okay, any questions on the for loop or for next loop? Okay, so if I use I here, so out here if I dim I is equal to 5, okay. So as you can see, it's the same variable name, right? I can do that, that's fine. I can use it even if it's declared, but I cannot redeclare it again here. Okay. If you do as integer type, that means that I'm redeclaring a new variable name called I. In this case, there's a conflict because I has already been declared. So if you're going to do it this way, you have to use a different variable name. Okay, outside of the for loop here. So it has to be like a J or a K or something. Okay, if it's already been declared, then you cannot change the data type. You have to use the I. That's why I said that it's always good to specify the data type here, so you don't mistakenly replace I. If I do this, I is 1 to 90 to 100. So let's just say out here, we're going to add, let's see what happens, okay? I'm going to add I to the list box, the first thing. So we do like items, add I. So this should be 5, right? Okay, and then I'll copy this so it goes through the loop. I is now 100 to down to 90. And then at the very bottom again, I'm going to add I again and see what the I is. Is it still 5? Or is it 90 now? Or is it 91 really? Right? So we'll see. So save, run. And then I click loop. The first I is 5. So if you can see, it changes, right? I is 5. After that, then it goes through the loop. It changes to 100. It decrements down to 99, 90, all the way to 90. After 90, we decrement it one more time to 89. 89 is no longer greater than 90, so that's false. So we exit out the loop. But now I has been changed to 89. So here's 89. Okay. So if you do it this way, just be careful because this I here will change the value of the I outside of the for loop. And if you want to use that for that purpose, then that's fine. If you don't, then use a different variable name in here. So it does not affect your data outside here. Okay? So I have to kind of watch out for that. And if you have this issue here, if you can't catch it, then you run into a debugging issue, which is the logic type of error, and it's really hard to debug. So you have to be careful with that one. Okay. Okay, so I want to show you, let me stop this, and then I want to show you the part where you actually can highlight a particular item on the list. So we know that going from 900 to 190, we have about 10 items on the list. And so for example, when you run this, right, the list is not selected. If you click on any of these rows, it's selected with a blue bar, right? So you know that that's a selected box. And if you click on it, you have, whatever it is. So what if you want to just say run the loop, and then when you run it, one of those record is it's been selected, okay, automatically when in the code. You can do that in your program, because for now, initially when we run it, it's not selected. So I could say in here, after I add the data to the list, okay, and then below that, if you want to select, let's just say the middle number between 90 and 100, I can say lst data dot, you have two options. We'll do the index first. So selected index, okay, right here, equals, let's just say 5. Well, maybe, well, will be 4, will be the middle one number, but because including 0, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth item will be highlighted. This is for highlighting. Or selecting an item. Okay, we'll see that it's been selected automatically when we run the application. So you can see that it's now selecting the sixth item, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th item, and it's selected with the blue bar, right? So that's one way. And if you know the index number, then you can select it by, assigning the selected index with this number here. If you want to select a very specific value in here, let's just say I want to select the number 92. Okay, so if you're not using the index, you can use the selected item instead. So here, instead of that, I would say select lst data selected item. Okay, right here. Items you can select multiple, but item is just single. Let's say I'm gonna select the number 92. Oops, that'll be the. Remember, everything in the list box is text. Okay, even though it's a list of numbers, really they are text. So it has to match this 92. It has to be on that list box. If it's not there, it will not do anything. It will just ignore it. It's not found. So now if I run, and you'll see that it is not selected. Okay, why is that? Selected item is 92. What? Let's see if that's the case. Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't do that. Okay, I thought you have to put the number, the character 92 there, but I guess it just knows it then, 92. But if you have like, I'm gonna add another line here, just maybe right here, just say I'm going to add cat to it. Okay, so I want to select cat, then I'll put cat here. I thought it was selected 92 as a string, but I guess it didn't. And let's see if cat is being selected. So yeah, so it does catch that. So for some reason, I guess maybe you don't have to specify that as a string. It will just know, which is cool. Okay, so just to show you that you can select the item by the value, or you can select the index by the number. And if you put both of them, I think it will probably ignore the first one. It will just run the last one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it will ignore the first one. Okay, and the reason why is because we didn't allow it to have a multiple selection. Okay, and let's see if that is true. So I'm going to go to the form design, and in the list box here. Okay, if I turn back the properties window, I think it should allow you to do multiple selection as well. So if you look in the selection mode, right here, it says 1. You could change that so it will have multiple simple. Well, let's see what that is. Okay. Let's see if it does allow us to do multiple selections. So you can see that you can do select multiple. Okay, and then you can, so when you select these, you can see that you have multiple selections. And that may be something that you might want to use for some type of application. Okay, but the default is just one selection. So I'm going to turn it back off to just one. And same thing with the combo box, you can also do that as well. So you can select it by pressing the shift key or the control key and the select that in the combo box, and should also let you, if you put into none, then you can't select any, right? You cannot disable it. So default is 1. And while I'm here, I'm just going to add this to the center screen. Okay. Any questions on this loop here? If not, we'll take a break and we'll come back and maybe we'll do some exercises in the book together. And we'll use both the do loop and the while loop and then the for loop as well. So I'll see you back in 10. Yes.